Welcome to our Suffolk Libraries Day online book festival. As a charity, our annual fundraising day is vitally important to us, and we are always so grateful for the support and the donations that we receive. Now, this is our fifth event this week for our book festival, and we have Janice Hallett with us. Welcome.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you, Lisa. Wonderful on a Friday night. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in.
It is awesome. Favourite author, just amazingly talented. And I'm going to start off by talking to you about your debut novel, The Appeal. It was one of the biggest selling debut novels of the year. You went on to win the New Blood Crime Writers Association Award. What was that like?
It was really surreal because, when you're there, I'd been at a few awards before because it was nominated for a few others. So I hadn't won those. So I was kind of blasé, really. Didn't think I'd have to get up and collect the prize because I thought this would be just another sort of awards evening that would be very nice. And I wouldn't win and I wouldn't have to make a speech. When they said I'd won, it was really surreal. I couldn't take it in. And that walk up to the podium, and well, I don't know whether what I delivered could be described as a speech. I certainly gabbled something out, but no, it was amazing and over so quickly. But wonderful. I mean, it's I can't even put into words how it feels to be recognised in that way by the industry. Just gobsmacked.
I saw it when it came on Twitter and I was so chuffed because it's so well deserved. And we had I've already mentioned, a wonderful question from James about The Appeal and asking how confident were you ahead of publication that unique email format messaging element and would prove successful, and how would it be received by readers?
I was really open-minded, and I have to say that in its early sort of pre-publishing time and for a few months after publication, readers weren't sure. And there was a time when it had as many 1-star reviews as it had 5-star reviews because the format was so different. Some readers didn't like it and posted that online. But I was open-minded. I thought if readers are savvy, they'll give it a go, even if they don't like it first of all. Perhaps they'll try again, and next time they'll get it. And then gradually, as the paperback was released, more people were reading it. People were getting it, so they were picking up that this was something different, and they were prepared. So yeah, it was, but it was a risk. It's an experiment, as I think all of my novels are experiments one way or another. And yeah, it might work and it might not, and that's what makes it exciting. And it's what I live for, that joy and that expectation.
And I think your writing is so original and fresh that I can, people are not used to it. But now I'm seeing it more because I read a lot of books for my job, and I'm seeing people using that kind of format more and more since The Appeal. So you've started something.
Wow, that is amazing to know, to be a trailblazer.
I think
in the
you
industry. That's
are.
wonderful.
I think the genius that you brought into it, people have gone, do you know what? This is it's a really unique and interesting way to tell a story. And Graham has just asked, like, did you always plan to write all of your novels? Because obviously you've got 3 currently out in this sort of unusual format, or was The Appeal supposed to be a one-off?
Well, yeah, I guess it would have been. When I started writing novels, I didn't think it would ever be plural. I'd been writing scripts, and because that literally hadn't worked out. I mean, I won't bore you with a long story of my 10 years trying to get into writing for TV, but it was 10 years, and I was at the end of my tether with that. So when it was suggested to me that I write a novel, it was literally a spur of the moment decision. I closed down my final draft document and opened up Word and set about writing The Appeal, and thought about the characters that I'd been generating for the spec script that I'd been working on, and wrote emails between them. And really, if I'd have thought any more about it, I probably wouldn't have written it like that. But no, I had no expectations at all that I'd ever write another one, that would ever be published. There was no commission, no deadline. I wrote all of it before my agent sent it out to publishers. So yeah, I was really open-minded, and in terms of other writing, I was kind of felt that I was at, you know, the end of the road. You know, where do I go from here with my writing? 'Cause I've been trying so long to be a script
Mm.
writer. So yeah, I mean, it just goes to prove that if you keep doing what you've been doing, you'll keep getting what you've got. And if you try something different, then that can completely change your life. And I'm living proof of that. Um, so let that be a lesson to everybody. And if there's any budding writers out there, you know, keep going, keep trying,
I
experiment.
love that. I love that, because it's like, you know, if you keep trying the same, you've got to shake it up. You've
Yeah.
got to find a different route to do what you love. And I know you co-wrote the film The Retreat, so
Mhm.
you were in that sort of the script writing, so you transitioned. Peter, I just wanted to add, I said you should have won all the awards. It's a
Oh,
great book, and the style is really different and fun, and I loved it.
thank you, Peter.
Um,
Thank you for reading.
So part of the like inspiration for the book, how did Sharon and her daughter become part of that?
Sharon.
XB.
Oh, Exaby, my friend Sharon. Well, my co-writer Sharon, because my very first play was co-written with Sharon. It was called It's My Manor, and it was put on by our amateur drama group, the Raglan Players. Big inspiration for the appeal. Yeah, Sharon. Sharon's one of my biggest fans, and yeah, she's you know, delighted to have a book that's you know, about the Raglan Players, because unfortunately the Raglan Players did have to disband in 2013. Yeah, our last play was in 2011, and unfortunately, like a lot of amateur drama groups, we can't get members. You know, people don't want to do that hobby anymore because it's so time consuming, and it's got, you know, it's difficult to put on a show, to advertise it, to do the set building. It's a lot of you have to do a lot of admin and a lot of donkey work before you can have the wonderful play that you put on and enjoy in front of the audience. So that's not a hobby people do now. And the appeal was in part my love letter to amateur drama and what it used to be, because the Raglan Players was started in 1972, when, you know, there's only what, 3 TV channels, and, you know, people didn't go out to eat, they didn't go on holiday other than 1 week a year, you know, so it was, they were looking for something to do every evening. So yeah, that's it's a very funny love letter, being about a murder, but nonetheless it is a love letter.
I really like that, and I think her daughter was involved with fundraising. It's another aspect of the appeal is the appeal of a fundraising campaign.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, when I started writing the appeal in 2018, there was actually a lot of fundraising on Facebook, crowdfunding for medical treatment, and that was a big inspiration for me uh, to do this, because of course those fundraising um, things that come on your feed, you don't know whether they're real or not, and
Mm.
because you don't know whether they're real or not, and there are these stories around of appeals that are fraudulent, um, that affects appeals that are genuine, and people won't engage with them. So yeah, the whole issue of fundraising is very interesting. I think in the appeal, we see characters who throw themselves into raising money as a kind of thing for themselves more than other people. It's a kind of personal
Mhm.
affirmation rather than altruistic. For other people, it is completely altruistic, and it's reflected in the characters who've been volunteering overseas, who've basically given their lives to helping others in war-torn parts of the world. Um, in contrast to people who stay home and work to make money for themselves. Which, I mean, that's not really a value judgment on my part, because we can do what we want with our lives. But it's very interesting, the paths that people choose, whether to help themselves or to help others, or how much of their lives is given over to help others. And yeah, it's a thread that runs through the appeal, I think.
Mm. And obviously, we've already touched upon with James's question, you've got all these correspondence going back and forth between different people, which are brilliant. I got an image of all the different characters, but I think you were, you know, less than 20,000 words in when you suddenly went, actually, and then you went back and you did that beginning part where it was going to become a package that is given to Charlotte and Femi. Why did you decide to do that?
It was to, I felt I was writing these emails and I thought, well, people will be reading these. And I kind of felt that there had to be a reason, why we're reading these. And what I thought, what could that be? And then it struck me that this could be um, lawyers reading all this evidence and trying to work out the truth, what was behind and between the lines and behind the words. So yeah, it did. I think I'd written less than 20,000. Actually, Femi and Charlotte were in the mix pretty early on, and I hadn't written many emails before I realised that really the reader would need, characters or someone to guide them through this material. And I think Femi and Charlotte and Hannah, their mentor, work as a kind of Greek chorus to lead us, to tell us what's happening, to précis things, to round things up now and again, to remind us what happened perhaps 200 pages back. So yeah, I think I love them as characters as well. They're very driven. They're as driven to solve this case as the characters in the appeal are driven to put their play on, or to raise money, or to do what they do in their lives. And I think I'm very inspired by other people's commitment and energy, and the sort of personal energy that they put into what they work towards in their lives. It's very interesting what we all choose.
Definitely. And I think by adding that at the beginning and by doing that in your other books, I felt as a reader that it was like an invitation, that it was almost addressed to me. Was that something you ever even contemplated or considered when you were doing that?
I did think while I was writing it, this is quite immersive. This is like an experience that involves the reader. And I think as the books have progressed, as I said earlier, each one is an experiment. I think they've become more immersive and more experiential for the reader, up until we get to the mysterious case of the Alperton Angels, where there isn't really anyone to guide us through the material. You just know what to do because of what I say at the beginning of the book. So yeah, there's a definite a package with each book that we have to dive into as a reader, and there's like an ulterior motive for reading that book, that other than just reading for pleasure. So yeah, it seems to have emerged as a theme. I hadn't really thought of that when I started writing.
It is. That's also really unique, where you are as the reader kind of invited into this world where you've given us this mystery, which I love, and I love the way your character development in all your books. But for example, with the appeal, I love Izzy. Izzy's fantastic. Me and my husband regularly go hiya to each other because of your book. And because of Izzy, because she's just like amazing, and I've like, she's in my mind. You
Yeah.
made her so real to me. When you were writing, for example, the appeal, was there any character that you enjoyed writing the perspective most of, that you liked being in the skin of most?
It probably Izzy, definitely. I think we all have an inner Izzy, and I think she brings it out of us. Yeah, Izzy is definitely in me for sure. And yeah, I love her. People email me now and they'll still put boo at the end of sentences because after Izzy. And after when the book came out and my friends were reading it, 3 or 4 of them emailed me and apologized for being Izzy to me. And I thought, well, that's weird because I'm Izzy. But no, they saw something in Izzy that they thought was them. So yeah, I think we've all got an Izzy, or we all fear we're in Izzy. Yeah, she's my favourite. But I love Sarah
Yes.
Jane. I do love Sarah
Yes.
Jane, and I think I would like to be Sam. Sam is kind of aspirational for me, but I think I can sometimes be a Sarah Jane and sometimes an Izzy.
That's really, because I had a question as well from Natalie, who said your characters are superb, and who do you base them on? And I was like, well, she might not base them on people, but do you
No,
sprinkle a bit of yourself in a lot of them?
do you know, it's weird. I don't consciously ever base them on anyone else. I think they're all a part of me. Even Steve in the Twyford Code, the lead character of the Twyford Code, is a former prisoner. He's only just learned how to read. He's had a terrible, terrible upbringing, terrible childhood, and a really difficult life in life of crime, couldn't be more opposite to me, the exact opposite of my entire life. And yet he is one of the characters that I feel closest to. So there's something there. There's something that I relate to in him, despite that. And I don't know, maybe he's who I might have been had I had his upbringing and his background. Maybe it's that. There's something there. So yeah, I think the primary source that I draw on is me for most of my main characters. And it could be also someone I admire. The lead character in the Alperton Angels, Amanda, she's based on a whole mix of people I've known, and particularly journalists that I knew when I was a journalist myself, and who I very much admired because they were so ruthless and so devoted to the story. They didn't care what anyone thought of them. They'd be as pushy as you like. They'd be rude if they had to be. That's not like me at all. I wasn't like that. But they got the story. They got what they wanted, and yeah, I admired that. So I think that the touchstone is always you when you're a writer, but yeah, you do absorb things from other people, and you get other people's experiences and other people's lives and lived experiences that you perhaps wouldn't experience yourself, but you can then take a stab, use your imagination, and have a guess at what their perspective is like. Um, so yeah, it's but I don't consciously ever base it, directly on one person that I know. It's just it almost wouldn't work because I don't know all about that person. I have to jump into the skin of the character while I'm writing, so the reader themselves can jump into the skin while they're reading. So yeah, it's always me. I think is the answer. It's me. It's all about me. Yeah,
A little bit of a sprinkle of you.
yeah.
Well, you mentioned Typhoid Code,
Hmm.
which is obviously your second novel, and I've
Hmm.
got a question for the event and a question that's come up from Karen that are quite similar.
Yeah.
So Jane wanted to know, following on from the success of the appeal, did you feel pressure to live up to that success? And Karen has said that she hasn't read the appeal. Read it, Karen. It's so good.
Read it, Karen. Oh, I'll
Um,
read that.
it's so good, but she has read your second and third novels and loves
Lovely.
them. And she's also asked a very similar question about, do you feel that pressure of the expectation to come up with the next brilliant idea?
I didn't have any pressure at all with the appeal. With the Twyford Code, I wrote it literally back to back with the appeal, hence it's a very different book, structured very differently. I didn't want to write the same book again. And I didn't really feel that much pressure with it because I'd not had any book published. It was still, the appeal still hadn't come out. But the Alperton Angels was written, the first book I've written, having been a published author. So that was where that pressure came in and that expectation came in, because I was well aware what people had loved and liked less about the other two books, and I had to write another one suddenly. So yeah, that I can't pretend it didn't keep me awake at 3 o'clock in the morning now and again. But luckily, I'm quite good at, once I'm faced with the blank page, forgetting everything that's around me and forgetting all of those pressures and just being in the moment and writing. And it's pretty important too, because since then I've written two more books. I've written the Christmas Appeal, and I've written the first draft of The Examiner, which is my next full-length novel. And it's something you have to put aside while you're writing, that expectation of everybody. And because I want it to be a journey. I want to grow with every book and not keep writing the same book again. That's not really what would inspire me or give me any joy. I want to always keep moving forward. So yeah, I have to forget the pressure, and hopefully I'll continue to be able to do that. See, that will keep me awake. Will I continue to be able to do it? 3 o'clock in the morning tomorrow, I'll be awake.
I'm sure you will. I have faith in you. And you just mentioned the Christmas Appeal, and that leads on really nicely that Kate said she loves your book so much. You're in good company, Kate. We all adore.
Thank you,
Janice's
Kate.
book.
Thanks.
And she said, like, can you tell us anything about the Christmas Appeal?
Oh, I can tell you a bit. I can tell you a little bit. We go back to Lockwood and to the Fairway Players, and it's been since the events of the appeal. Appeal mainly takes place in 2018, but the very last date is something like early 2020. But this one's set in 2022, so it's moved on. We've moved on a couple of years, and things have changed in the area. People have come and gone. There's new characters. There's still plenty of old characters there, and we've had a few power changes in the Fairway Players, and the group is about to put on a pantomime for Christmas to raise money for the church roof. And there's a murder. That's all I can say. And it's a festive frolic in Lower Lockwood. I had such a scream writing it. It was so lovely to be back with those characters again. And they were like old friends, and it was like visiting a place in my past that I'd loved. And oh, lovely. I really, really enjoyed it. I hope readers enjoy it as much as I enjoyed writing it, because it was wonderful. Fingers crossed anyway.
No, I'm sure we will. I was actually going to ask you, like, what was it? Because it's really different picking up characters to starting with a blank page, no characters, no plot. Oh, what am I going to write? So I imagine it'd be like all familiar for us as readers. And when we were talking about I'm just going to do it again, Typhid Code. They say on the front, there's a quote from the Sunday Times that says it's that you're modern day Agatha Christie, and I couldn't agree more. I would say Agatha Christie at her best. I love Agatha Christie, but if anyone's read The Big Four, she did go off the rails a few times. But my favourite book of hers is The Murder of Roger Ackroyd, and yet, it's just genius. But then you are as well. Like,
thank you.
You can capture.
I'm sure I'm not.
You really are. You capture that same level of genius in the Twyford Code, and that's really not an easy feat. I genuinely don't know how you do it. How do you approach plotting such a complex and brilliant book?
Well, I approach the plotting the way I approach everything else, by not doing it. I just set off writing, and the characters lead me where they're going to lead me. And in the case of the Twyford Code, I had a vague idea it was going to be about a code in children's books, because way back when I first ever had the inkling of this idea, I'd called it the Blyton Code, because it's so very inspired by Enid Blyton. But when I looked at Blyton's work and thought, how could I impose a code on this, I couldn't do it. And I thought it's just going to be so much easier to invent the children's author and to be able to write the works myself that she wrote. So yeah, I didn't plot at all. Steve just flowed. He came out, he led me down the paths that he led me. And when I got to the end, I kind of knew, eventually I knew what the code was about. I didn't know what the Twyford Code was going to refer to until I literally got to that line in the book, sort of 3/4, nearly at the end, where it says what it refers to. And the cursor was blinking over that, the Twyford Code is. I had to think what it was. So yeah, I don't plan at all, because for me it takes the joy out of the discovery of the plot, and I just like to let the characters take me there. But I have to also qualify that with the book doesn't come out quite like it is when it's published. I have to go back and reverse engineer a lot of those plot points, and then when my editor gets hold of it, she'll hammer it a bit more and get me to do a few more changes that will improve it even further. So it's a big. I think all of my plotting happens then, after that first draft, when I've got the characters and I've got the themes and I've got the general journey of the story. And that's when I start the plotting and putting things in that refer to other things, and the red herrings and the clues, all of that. So yeah, it's done in reverse.
The audience wouldn't have been able to see me. I was going with a shocked face, because I read so much. I was adamant. I was with my husband. Yeah, Janice obviously plans. There's no way she could pull this off, a book like this, unless she's planned it all the way through. And for people like Karen that have also read the book, I imagine it's a surprise that you reverse engineer that. Those. I won't say too much.
You can't say too much. That's the trouble with the Twyford Code. You just can't talk about it. There's so much to say.
It's really, really extraordinary, and has that kind of whoa. And I knew that you let your characters kind of free range on you, but as I say, like go off. But I just assumed you did that within the plot. So do they ever do things that you're not expecting? Do they take you on a journey like us as readers.
Yeah, definitely. They absolutely did. Well, when Steve was talking to me first of all, and I was writing down one of the early scenes where he talks about his background, I didn't realise that he couldn't read or write. And then he told me that he couldn't read or write. And then I knew that these files that, or this, what I was transcribing effectively from this character whose voice I could hear, um, I knew then that he was recording it verbally, and that what I was writing was a transcription of those verbal recordings, and that was where that element came in to that. Because Twyford Code is written almost verbatim. He's talked into his phone as he investigates the mysterious disappearance of his teacher in 1983. So yeah, he's yeah. There's no other excuse. I don't do any plotting.
I really would have thought you like, because it is so brilliantly done. And I remember again saying about Agatha Christie, I know she wanted to write, for example, And Then There Were None for years, and she was trying to work out how do you do that? How do you get to the end of a book where everyone's dead and yet there was still a murderer? You know, like, it's so maybe she did the same thing. You've blown my mind, to be honest. But what I found really interesting about what you were just saying is you obviously really have very strong instincts that you follow. And that's extraordinarily brave, I think, especially when you're coming at these books in a really original and fresh way. Like, have you always done that when you've been script writing and the things that you've done with your writing in the past? Or have you kind of, feel like budding writers, have you grown to listen to that instinct?
Yeah, I think it's a bit deceptive, really, the appeal being my first novel and this being kind of a new thing for me, because I was a very experienced writer when I started writing them. And I've been script writing for best part of 15 years when I started writing novels. And script writing is a very specific character-led form of writing. It's quite technical, but it's also character-led and dialogue-led, which, when you know that I've been writing dialogue and delivering character through dialogue for so many years, you can look at these books and say, right, yeah, that wasn't such a move away, because these are mainly dialogue based, and it might be writing dialogue, or it might be typing email dialogue, but it's still characters talking to each other. So I was pretty experienced in storytelling, and I think that counted for quite a lot. But yeah, I would my advice to budding writers is to read a lot, to explore forms of storytelling, um, films, TV, short stories, novels, even things like documentaries. A documentary still tells a story, even though it's using fact, it's using real people, it's using whatever statistics and things. Even the driest documentary has a storyline and an arc. So storytelling is itself, there are certain key rules that whatever story you're telling, it will follow. So yeah, that was key to me. I think my experience of script writing as a journalist was very important as well, with my discipline. Getting to the end of a novel, lots of people start novels and don't get to the end of them. It's really important that you finish your novel, or you finish your short story. That's a skill in itself. So yeah, I'd learned lots of skills along the way. So yeah, I would practice, experiment, hone your skills, budding writers out there, and learn as you write.
And I love that. Thank you, Janice, because Louise had asked, because Louise is working on the first chapter of her first novel. So I hope
Well done,
that
Louise.
helps.
Yep, Louise, keep at it, keep going, and yeah, keep going. Don't dwell over that first chapter too much. Write chapter 2 and 3 and 4 and 5. Then you can always go back, like I always do. You can go back and make it better.
And I just wanted to add a comment from Karen, who said that you are an absolute genius, and how difficult it is to be original these days, but you really are. And I wholeheartedly agree.
Thank you, Karen.
And I'm so glad that, because I didn't realise, for example, when you said about your debut, the appeal, that some people are going, oh, this is not good. So I'm so glad people, that changed. Maybe a Shawshank Redemption moment where it's like just did really well after it came out of the cinema, and everyone was like, this is brilliant. So I'm so glad that happened, because then we got a second, third, and I know there's a forthcoming. There's a question that I've got for that later on. What I wanted to ask you about your latest book, the Alperton Angels. I kept going Appleton in my head. But
no, it's Alperton. If you know
yeah, I'm
northwest
like,
London, Alperton is on the Piccadilly line.
yeah,
It's northwest of London.
Alperton Angels.
Yeah.
That first beginning of the book, would you read that page for us?
With pleasure. Yes, the book starts with a poser for the reader. It starts with a question or a dilemma or an instruction, I suppose you could say. I'm going to read it. Right. Here we go. You have a key that opens a safe deposit box. Inside is a bundle of documents, archived research material for a book that has just been published. You must read it all and make a decision. Either replace the documents and the box, then throw the key where it will never be found, or take everything to the police.
Dong, dong, dong.
Dum, dum,
It is.
dum, dum. EastEnders theme at the end.
No, more like a thriller moment.
Yeah.
So I was talking to Janice before we started. I'm still undecided. I don't know what I'm doing with the contents of the book yet. I'm not sure if I'm going to have to reread the book again and just try and get my head around what am I going to do. My husband's thrown the key away. So I wanted to ask those that are watching, if you've read the book, where do you stand? Do pop that in the Q&A. I'd love to see. And when this is on YouTube, when you're watching catching up, feel free to pop that in the comments, because I will go back and look. Do you not know what you're going to do? Are you taking it to the police? Are you getting rid of that key? Do let us know. I would love to hear that. But Janice, what are you going to do? What if this was given to you?
Oh, I think I'd go to the police.
Ooh.
Yeah, can't say why really, because
Why?
it would give things away.
No,
But
well,
I would go to the police. I'd take it to the police. I think in my experience, people who've shared with me what they would do, it's been about 50-50, which I don't know, maybe that's good. Maybe that's the way it should be.
yeah, it's like how many are undecided? I'm really on the fence. Every time I decide one way, I go, yeah, I might take it to the police. No, I should throw it away. Oh, why did you give me this question and dilemma? But that's what's really lovely about your books, because as a reader, I feel so invested in it. Like I genuinely think I need to make a decision, and it's a fictional book.
Oh, you absolutely have to make the decision.
You do. It's very important. And I know that you are reading I'm Gone in the Dark, and that's part of the
I'll Be Gone in the Dark.
inspiration.
Yeah, that's massive inspiration. Don't know if anyone watching here has ever read it or seen the documentary. Documentary of the same name, directed by Liz Garbus. I'll Be Gone in the Dark, and book is written by Michelle McNamara, American author, true crime author, who investigated a series of brutal murders in the 70s and 80s in California. A serial killer who came to be known as the Golden State Killer. And her book is her investigation into what was basically a long dead cold case. And she became quite obsessed with solving the case, which meant, but she couldn't solve the case, so she couldn't finish the book. And that it turned out to be a terrible dilemma. And her dedication to that it's very much inspired the character of Amanda and of Oliver, her nemesis. There are two true crime authors in this book who are racing each other to a key interviewee from an historical case. And both of them they're very different characters, but they're similar in their drive and in their need to get to the story or get to the bottom of things. They go about that in very different ways. But yeah, that's the dedication to finding the truth is an inspiration behind the Alperton Angels. But I'll Be Gone in the Dark, brilliant read. Try, if you like true crime, I would put it on a par with In Cold Blood, for sure. It's really beautifully written as well as beautifully researched.
And when you said about Amanda and Oliver, great characters. great interaction between them both, and I really like, there's a character in the book, I will stay away from spoilers, but there is a character in the book called Ellie, I think it's Ellie, who does
Ellie,
like the
yeah.
translation, like, so in the book, without telling you what content it is, Amanda has an assistant who transcribes audio that she's recorded. So I'll just be very careful. One of the things I really love that you did in the book is when Ellie's transcribing it, typing it, she'd have her little comments to go, oh dear, Amanda, what's going on here? And was that a lot of fun for you? Because you do that a lot in your books.
It was absolute loads of fun, and it crept up on me. I mean, you'll notice if you've read the book, it starts. At first, she doesn't do it very much, and she does it a lot more as the book goes on, and that was how it naturally happened. She naturally had more to say as things hotted up, really. But yeah, and if anyone out there has ever transcribed anything for a living, it's absolutely crashingly boring. It's so boring. Even if what you're transcribing is interesting, transcribing it is really dull. So I imagine this assistant transcribing these, interviews very painstakingly, especially painstaking when it was in a busy coffee shop and she could barely hear, and a bit being quite annoyed and putting her own comments in, or noticing things and having her say about it, or not liking one of the interviewees and letting Amanda know that she doesn't like them. That kind of tickled me really, that the assistant was enlivening her own day by diving into the material herself.
It was fantastic, and you're right, as you say, it gets more and more through the book that she's like ad-libbing, saying, Amanda, I think this is when you got some crisps out, like, so relatable, so brilliant. And it that's what I mean about your characters, they feel so real. And I just wanted to add thank you to Ingrid and Karen for letting me know about what they would do with the contents of the book.
What would they do?
They're throwing away the key.
Oh wow, okay.
So yeah, it's really, I think, yeah, we should have like a big poll for Suffolk Libraries. Like, what would you do?
Yeah.
Because one day I might make my mind up, I don't know. One of the other things that was really good in the book was Amanda's approach to that first chapter.
Yes.
So and so brilliant. So as again, being very careful, as Amanda, as it unfolds the documents that have been used for the book, Amanda keeps going back to how she's going to start her book with that material. And I'm not sure you do from what you said, but do you ever stop and start yourself and go, actually, it will be better from that angle?
Yes, sometimes, because the start of a book is so important. And Amanda discovers such a string of amazing things along the way. So her book starts very, very differently each time she starts it. But yeah, I'll pay a lot of attention to how a book opens. And it often opens differently to how I started that first draft. And I myself experiment with different openings for each of the books. So yeah, it's kind of how I work. But it turned out to be quite a good way to put forward, to sort of précis and kind of update the reader as to where Amanda is in her thinking at any particular time. So it's quite a good device as well.
Absolutely, it's so brilliant, and I feel like all your books are brilliant, and I didn't think you could make them any better. And then your third book, I'm like, now that's my favourite. So it's just adding that fresh originalness to it. And one of the things I do a lot is I listen to a lot of audiobooks. So I have listened to them all on audio. And Tracy said that she really enjoys listening to your books as audiobooks. Absolutely agree, really good. And she was wondering if you ever have any input with the audiobooks and what are your thoughts on audiobooks in general. And then she said, because some people say it's not proper reading, but I enjoy audiobooks just because I simply don't have time to read all the wonderful books that are out there. And I understand that it's like no extra time, you can be putting the washing in and listening and having this journey and story.
I think it absolutely is reading. 100. Don't listen to people who tell you it's not reading. It definitely is reading.
Yeah.
So we got that out of the way. It's reading. But do I ever have an input? Do you know, the majority answer would have to be not really, no. the book is written, I don't listen to audiobooks myself, and I don't write them with audiobooks in mind either. So the audiobooks is made by a particular department, and they have actors. And what they'll do is send me voice examples from various different actors that they've got, and I'll listen to them reading bits of the book. And it's more of a courtesy thing, really, to see that I like them. But I don't have any input, really. I mean, if I massively objected, maybe, but I wouldn't, because they are the experts in audiobooks. And I'm delighted to hear that everybody loves the audiobooks. So, it sounds like they're doing their job brilliantly. So yeah, I don't have much of a say in it. It always amazes me that people do read books in that way and love the books just as much. Yeah, it's wonderful. So thank you. Keep listening, folks, and I hope you continue enjoying them.
Definitely, I do like the physical book as well, but
Yeah.
it's nice to have that variety. And I cover digital services as well for Suffolk Libraries, so I'm always like, check out our audio, check out our ebooks. And Louise has said that she's just gone and ordered Gone in the Dark, so she's going to be
Fabulous.
checking that out, which is
Lovely.
awesome.
Hope you enjoy it.
And Kate has said, in regards to that beginning book, the beginning page that you read so awesomely for us, has said she keeps changing her mind. I totally know what you're talking about, Kate. It's really tough.
Yeah.
But she said, and I don't think it's a spoiler, but instead intriguing, to say because of how dangerous it could be to be in the know.
Yep.
And I'll just leave it at that as an intriguing moment. So those of you watching or catching up on our YouTube, you'll be like, why is it dangerous?
What?
You'll have to read the book and find out. And I know when obviously you touched upon things like Gone in the Dark, I'll Be Gone in the Dark, and you had inspiration from people in your life. You also do a lot of research.
Yeah.
Now, is that something, I mean, I love doing research. Is it something you enjoy? Do you find do you have to pull yourself away and go, I found out enough about that now, I need to write the book?
With this book, it was kind of 50-50. Half of my research I do anyway, and that's true crime. I love it. That's no, hardship to reading documentaries, films about true crime, and cults as well. That's a subject I'm really interested in. I did a lot of research into the psychology of cults. That's what leads people to join them, what leads people to start them, the kind of personality that a cult leader might have, because I had to create one here. So that research I jumped into with Gay Abandon. There was other research I had to do that was less comfortable for me. And one of the characters, at least in here, I mean, the book deals with the care system, which is something I have no experience of from any angle. So I had to research that quite considerably, and I went through friends who'd worked in child protection and within the care system, and they put me in touch with other people who put me in touch with other people, and I did a lot of interviewing there from people with first-hand lived experience of that, and it was fascinating. It was sobering, and I came out of it not really knowing whether what I'd done was doing justice to that experience. I think when I do research into such emotive topics, I always think I haven't done enough. It hasn't come out how I wanted it to be. Have I honored these people's experience by delivering what they were communicating to me, delivering that in the book or respecting that in the book. So I'm always left thinking, have I done it right with certain kinds of research? So that side is not particularly enjoyable for me. It's completely necessary, but it's part of the job. The great research and the difficult research that will give me a better book at the end, I hope. So it's a bit of both, really. But, yeah, I think the more books you write, I don't know whether this is true of other writers, the more books I'm writing, the more research I'm having to do, because the further away I'm moving from my own experience on this journey that we were talking about before. The appeal very close to my own experience. Twyford Code, I was very invested in that character. He's very similar to me. This, again, a movement away. And my next book is another movement away, and I've had to do more research for that. So yeah, I don't know. Is that a trend that's going to continue? I'm not sure.
When you said about your next book, I think it's called The Examiner,
It is.
and Stella did ask, who also loves your books.
Thank you,
How it
Stella.
is, really, isn't it? Everyone has to, otherwise they're mad. She loves your books and has asked, when is your next book going to be out?
Well, the next one is The Christmas Appeal, and that's
Oh, of
26th of
course.
October. It's a novella. It's not a full-length novel. So about just over a third the size of a regular novel. Very easy to read in the run-up to Christmas when everybody's so busy. So yeah, that's my next book out. My book after that, The Examiner, full-length book, it's going to be out 2024, but not in my previous slot of January, because that would clash with the Christmas Appeal. So it's going to be later on in 2024. Could be as late as September. I'm not sure the date's been completely finalized there, but yeah, it's going to be later in the year. But I'll let you into a secret that the day, if you're watching this on Facebook later, we're speaking on a particular day here, and it's the very day that I've handed my first draft in to my editor this morning of The Examiner. So she's got that now, and very, very exciting. Landmark moment, because I started it back in June of last year. So 6 of 8, 9 months ago. What was it? Was it July? 8 months ago. Yeah. So
What's that moment like? Because I think, for example, with The Appeal, that was kind of kept secret, wasn't it? I think like your agents were like the only ones
they were, yeah.
really
My husband didn't
who
know, my
knew.
partner, completely unaware. I mean, he thought I was script writing. He did know I was writing, but he didn't realise I'd written a novel at all until it was about to be published. Yeah, so
It's
quite
like,
fun.
that's what you've been working on.
And it sounds a strange thing to do. I'm not weird in doing that. It's because I'd spent such a long time writing scripts and getting rejected and not getting anywhere, that I kind of got into the habit of not letting people close to me into what I was doing, because if I then had to tell them that something wasn't happening, or that I'd been rejected again, or that this wasn't happening, which was my life basically then, it would upset them. And I wanted to protect them, because I didn't mind being rejected. It's part of the job, it's part of life. But I didn't like that they didn't like it. So I kind of saved him from the potential of the novel not being published or not working, by not telling him. And so, but I did take it right up until that kind of blinking cursor on the page again, right up until I had to tell him. I didn't tell him till then, which is quite funny, quite funny really. He laughs about it now very much.
He must be so thrilled at how well it's gone for
Yeah,
you
he's
after.
amazed.
Yeah.
And he's not a big reader himself. He reads music biogs mostly. So reading my novels are really the only novels he reads, and he's very diligent in going through them, making notes, and being very careful to try and investigate who did it. So it's quite fun.
I did spend a lot of time, for example, it was the Tyford Code. I was going back, and but also in your latest book as well, going back to check things. And I finished reading it, and I turned around to my husband and went, I need to read this again. Which is, I think, a sign of a superb book, because you're like, oh my God, I didn't see. I want to go back and reread it with the knowledge that I now have as to what happened. So when you said like The Examiner hit the send button, what's that like? What's that? Because they're going to come. I interviewed I think it was last year, Jane Fallon, and she said when she hits that send button, she's just like waiting for
Well,
what comes
I've
back.
been kind of leading up to it for about a week, knowing that I was going to send it at some point, and having it to send, but not really sending it. It's like I
Yeah.
haven't, not really doing it. Not today. I'll do it tomorrow. I won't do it today. But I had to send it. So I thought Friday is a good day to send something and to get it off. So I was gearing myself up, and finally did it. But I kind of, again, I try to go on my instinct of when it's right to do. And because I could sit with all of these books, and I'm sure all the ones I'm going to write in future, I could write them forever. I could keep going backwards and forwards through them, honing, tweaking, changing things, putting things in, taking them out. I could carry on doing that, but it has to go. It has to get onto that next stage where Miranda sees it and gives me feedback, and I can then make bigger changes, the structural edit that we do, first of all. And that's the book really shapes up after that. So I have to get onto the next stage. I have to do it. So it's like it's that cliff you have to step off, for sure.
And do you like, because it's again, it's a bit like the question at the beginning of your latest book. A lot of authors are sort of 50-50 on if they enjoy the editing process. Some
I
are like,
enjoy it.
it's really painful, and others are like, it just makes my book even better.
Yeah, absolutely. It's nerve-wracking. You have to hold your nerve, because when I get it back, I'll have to probably break down that draft that I've got. So you go from having a book to then having just a mess of stuff in the middle, because you've broken all the eggs, but you haven't yet got the omelette. So you have to really hold your nerve, because you no longer have a book, but you have to keep at it and sit down at your desk every day and do a bit more on it to try and get it back, or to get it up, to move it to that next level that you have all the notes to do. But yeah, I love it, but it's tough and it can be difficult, but it's worth it. It's worth really paying attention at that stage. And things that you overlook at that stage, you'll only have to do at the next stage anyway. So I try and get as much done then as possible.
And when you might not be able to, but can you tell us what it's about without telling us what it's about?
I can't at the moment until Miranda has seen it and likes what it's about. It might be about something completely different if I have to rewrite it. So you never know. And it's tempting fate for me to
Yeah,
say it. So I'm quite superstitious. So
we
yeah,
won't do that.
no,
We'll
we
be,
won't do
yeah.
that. But it's going to be it's also a non traditional narrative, but it's different again. So that's about all I can say. Sorry.
No, I totally understand. And I think that's really interesting as an author, that you keep it so fresh and fun and interesting for not just us, but for you. Because
Yeah.
like there are authors that write, they're on book 18. I mean, Ellie Griffiths, for example, is finishing the series this week, and she's just finished with Galloway. And, there's uproar. But she's been writing about this character for so many years. She wants to do something fresh,
Oh yeah.
because it's can make it more interesting for you as an author. And I'm going to ask you a slightly weird question. I think you're a really big travel fan. You
Yeah.
like traveling around the world.
Love it.
Have you ever thought of like is there like a favorite place you've ever visited that you'd love to base a book there?
I've got so many favorite places. I would love to write a book set somewhere else. I had a great holiday in Japan, the very South Korea. I loved Madagascar, brilliant. The Galapagos, really interesting islands. Yeah, I would. Although I can't think of any ideas at the moment, because I've got a queue of ideas that I'm kind of queuing up in my mind, and none of them are particularly set abroad, but I wouldn't rule it out at all. I would love to write a novel set overseas, and of course, I'd have to do a lot of research by doing lots of traveling to write that novel. That's what's going to spur me into doing it for sure.
I was going to joke that, to say, well, if it's in Japan, I'm just going to have to go back.
Gonna have to. Yeah.
Oh, it's such a chore. Flights booked. Um, Research can be fun.
Yeah.
Um, do you have, when you said about like different ideas, obviously
Mm.
you've got the Examiner coming out, you've got 3 books published, you've got this
Yep.
lovely the Christmas Appeal coming out in October.
Mhm.
Do you already have lots of other, I mean, like, basically, are we going to get a lot more books, is where this
I've
question's
got
going?
loads of ideas. I spent so long uh, writing spec scripts for TV and film that I've got a whole load of TV and film ideas that are just asking to be worked into a novel. I mean, they changed quite a bit to become a novel. The Appeal started off as a sort of screen idea, but it's completely different. And Triflico did as well, I guess, in the beginning. Did Alperton Angels? I can't think. Oh yeah, well yeah. I guess the in the Alperton Angels there's a script in there that is based on a script that I wrote. So yeah, also that um, was based on it. So yeah, there's a queue of those ideas that I already have, and I have new ones as well. The Examiner, in fact, is a new idea that's leapfrogged over some existing ideas when it struck me.
It goes to the top of the list.
Went to the top straight away. Yeah.
Is that for you? Do you decide because it's what excites you more, writing it?
Yeah, I guess so. I let it happen, really. I mean, I have all these ideas and they're all kind of bubbling here. And then as I think, what should I do next? Maybe one idea bubbles up a bit higher than the others, and then it might come down, and another one bubbles up. And then when I start writing, I kind of have to trust that the right idea bubbles up right at that time and gets onto the page, and I'm off on it, gets me off down that ski slope of the story. So yeah, a lot I do by instinct and I let it happen organically, rather than thinking. I think thinking can kind of hamper you sometimes. It hampers me anyway. I'm better when I don't think.
I love that, and you really do trust your instincts. I think because we do have a lot of writers that watch, because we've got about 80 plus interviews now on our YouTube channel that I've done, and a lot of writers do watch them. And I think what you're talking about is going to be, I personally, I think it's one of the best advice I've ever heard from your own writing experience, is to like trust those instincts of what feels right in that moment. And I love that all the work that you did before that didn't work out is now working out, but in a different format, in a different way. So it's I'm a big believer that, like, you know, not everything comes, something always comes from what you do. It's
Absolutely.
never a waste.
I would say that in those 15 years, I did have one co-written film made early on in that time, but even that 10 years I spent writing things that simply didn't see the light of day, not 1 minute of my time was wasted, because it's all now going into these novels and this form of writing that I've discovered. Um, so yeah, everything happens for a reason. There's always a purpose. You just have to stay connected to it and keep working, keep the faith, really, and yeah, finish the novel, finish that chapter, then finish the next one.
And just keep, and eventually finish the book, because you're right,
Exactly.
it's
Yeah.
that getting to the end
Mhm.
bit.
Even if you
um
only write 100 words a day, or a chapter, or a sentence, you'll eventually have written your book.
I love that. It's
Mm.
been so amazing talking to you.
Oh, it's, well, goodness, it's been an hour already.
Yeah,
It has absolutely been amazing, flown by.
it's absolutely flown by, and it's been such a joy, and I'm so glad that you could take part. And I wanted to finish by asking you, like, now we've talked about your writing to career, you transitioned into writing books. Now you're this successful author. What do you love most about it? The research, the reading, like meeting fans? What is an aspect of your now career that you love the most?
After the actual writing, which is always my favourite bit, it's meeting readers. It's meeting people who've read that writing and been inspired by it and have loved it and have taken something from it. I mean, it's priceless. And luckily, thanks to the internet, my generation of authors have that great privilege to be connected to their readers all the time, thanks to Twitter and Instagram. And I do lots of bookshop events as well. And festivals, literary festivals, where I meet people and get to speak to them, and that's wonderful, absolutely wonderful. It's a joy, and it was something I didn't really anticipate, because you don't think of that immediately when you think of having a book out, but not necessarily that people would be talking to you about it. So that's been a wonderful revelation about this whole experience. So it's been wonderful. So thank you very much, everyone, for reading and letting me know how much you enjoy it. It's wonderful. Thank you.
You have brought a lot of joy, I think, to a lot of people with your phenomenal books. But I just want to finish by thanking everyone that's joined us for your questions before and during the live event. And as I said, do feel free on YouTube to let us know what would you do with the documents. No spoilers, though. Let's keep it clean.
No spoilers.
Not, keep the secret for others. It's very important. When this live event finishes, you'll go to our website. There's a link to purchase Janice's latest book, but I would just immensely recommend all of them. And I think the Examiner is going to be great, and just basically everything you write, really.
Oh, thank you, Lisa.
I have complete faith will be absolutely superb, because you're following your instincts. I think that's a really powerful thing. So we've got another 2 events for this festival. We've got a podcast, awful podcast, starting on the 21st of March, I'm hoping that's right. In that book, they've used a documentary as part of the way of telling the narrative. This is what I mean, it's really catching on. So thank you, everybody. And finally, Janice, huge fan. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute joy to be here. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for watching in the future. And thank you for everyone who's joined us tonight.